What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleash, the weekly panel discussion show. And as always, we have a fantastic panel to talk about this savagery, this nonsense for all you mofos out there watching. So I'm very happy to introduce somebody I've wanted to get on the show for quite some time. A good friend, one of the best drinking buddies you can have during fight week. He is known as the main reporter for MMA at TSN and low-key quite the hip-hop head, Aaron Bronsteter. Aaron, what's going on, my man?
How are you, sir? It's nice to be on with you. I've got my records behind me. I'm sure I can pull out a cut for you at some point in time if you want to see some sort of hip-hop I can pull out.
Absolutely, man. You surprised me, man, when you started breaking out the deep hip-hop cuts. So I'm very impressed about that, and we definitely have a lot of catching up to do on the music front. But let's go ahead and start talking about this face punching. Every week, these two gentlemen on the bottom row hold it down. Let's introduce first the jack of all trades who has mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherlock.com, Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, my man?
Hey, I'm doing really well. It's a great hot day down here in Houston. It was a great hot weekend of fights that we just got out of, and I can't wait to break them down.
Absolutely. And every week it is anchored by the man with the stats, the facts, the figures, and the numbers, the associate editor of Sherlock.com, and my good friend Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on?
You know, every now and then an event rolls around where you kind of have to stop yourself and go, wow, this totally changed my mind on some things. I learned something I never thought I would come across, and that happened this weekend for one of the cards that I'm sure we might have a few words about. And to start things off, I suppose we'll go with our stat of the week, which our stat of the week is 18 because AJ McKee is 18-0, 18 wins in Bellator. So obviously he's the record holder for the most wins, the most consecutive wins at featherweight in Bellator, and the most consecutive wins in Bellator. But he has the most consecutive wins in a company of any fighter to ever compete in the sport. Like Anderson Silva, forget it. John Jones, no. Max Holloway, Khabib, all those guys. 18-0, all 18 in Bellator. I don't think we're going to see that again until he wins again, if he wins this next fight. So that AJ McKee guy, he's really something.
Yeah, he's a kind of a serious competitor right there. And I think that's a very appropriate way to start things off. Swing or miss, gentlemen. We'll just jump right into it. With his win over Patricio Pitbull, a complete annihilation in the first round, is AJ McKee the number one featherweight in the world? Aaron, let me get your thoughts on this first.
You know, it's such a hard question because I thought that Patricio Pitbull was a top 10 pound-for-pound guy in the sport. So, he's the two-division champion in Bellator, doesn't get as much respect from those that don't really follow the sport. And for him to do that to Pitbull in that amount of time, in that fashion, like I almost have to swing here. I mean, I just, I'm sure whoever watches this says, oh, he hasn't fought UFC competition and all that. But I mean, Patricio Pitbull in the UFC is at least a top 3 featherweight, in my opinion. I think that he can hang with anybody there. We do have to keep in mind, though, Alexander Volkanovski has not lost a fight since before AJ McKee debuted as an MMA fighter, right? I mean, Volkanovski is very tough to find a path for AJ McKee against Volkanovski because Volkanovski, I mean, let's face it, the guy's got no neck. It's going to be hard to sub that guy. And then at the same time, if it's a striking fight in a chess match, I think Volkanovski could certainly beat AJ McKee. But listen, for him to do that to Patricio Pitbull, it knocked my socks off. I thought that he was going to win that fight, but in that kind of fashion, it's just, I'm going to have to swing at this one. I think that he would probably be favored against any featherweight on the planet right now.
Ben, Jay, are we swinging our bats at this one, or are you just going to let the ball swing past you?
I'm tapping the brakes, but not very hard. Jay and I both contribute to the Sherdog rankings panel. Rankings update came out today, and we have McKee at number 2, right behind Volkanovski and ahead of Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. And while that usually forms a consensus among a pool of people that I don't always agree with, I feel pretty good about that one. It's easy to get caught up in the optics. On one hand, Patricio Pitbull is the first and only uncontroversially top 10 quality guy that McKee has beaten. But again, like by the optics, just in the last couple of years, every successive challenge that was supposed to be, okay, this is the next reasonable challenge for AJ McKee. This is a good test of where he is. He has blown through it so easily that it makes Bellator look silly for making the matchup. And I mean, I'm often one to pile on Bellator for making silly matchups, but McKee is just, he's growing exponentially, and he's outpacing their ability to matchmake him sensibly in a way that you have to go back to pre-title John Jones to really see, where, you know, every next challenge that was supposed to kind of like test John Jones, he just, you know, completely trashed him. That's where McKee is right now. And kind of like the way I said or felt, hey, John Jones is probably the best light heavyweight on the planet right now, even when his actual accomplishments on paper had not yet justified that. It's the way I'm feeling about McKee. Just, he has looked so good. He's doing things to fighters that have never been done to them before. And every time he comes out, he tends to show us something he hasn't done before. He is growing exponentially between fights. That's a long way for me not to give you any kind of answer to that question. Sorry.
Man, you know, I'll dive in. This is it really is tough because you have to look at strength of schedule, and then you have to ask the question: are the rankings UFC favored? Because Michael Chandler, a guy who may have been in the top 15 in most international, not just UFC rankings, came in there and whooped a top 10, I think like top 6 or 7 Dan Hooker, and everybody went, oh, wait a second, maybe there isn't such a chasm between organizations after all. You look at PFL and find fighters that did great in the UFC or did fine or whatever are in PFL and are encountering opponents who are like, oh, maybe it isn't just as simple as X UFC guy cruises through the competition. I was not on the AJ McKee train, because I kept on thinking there's going to be that next guy. There's going to be that next opponent that he's going to face is going to put him in the kind of adversity he hasn't been in before. Like he's gone the distance in several fights, but I can't think of fights in his past where he's been controlled for a while or like somebody takes him down and keeps him down for 3 minutes. Even early on in his career when he was fighting like the Ray Woods, Brandon Phillips types, where he was in the driver's seat basically the whole time. And I thought Patricio Pitbull would have been that guy because he always is that guy. He has always been that type of fighter where you're going to have to kill him to get him out of there. And spoiler alert, nobody had. Like his only stoppage loss was when his own leg snapped in half when he was fighting Ben Henderson in a fight he was probably going to win and cruise to an easy 30-26. So this is the kind of thing where you look at and go, man, no one had ever out Pitbull like Michael Chandler is the guy who I mentioned before, and he starched him. There was no controversy. It wasn't a fluke. It wasn't like you can look at it like Rose versus Joanna, where UFC goes, well, that wouldn't happen a second time, that kind of thing. No, man, he walked him down and beat his face in, and that makes me really high on AJ McKee. But Alexander Volkanovski beat Max Holloway twice. I mean, yes, I personally scored it in favor of Holloway in at least the second fight, but the what he's done, beating Jose Aldo, beating Chad Mendes. But if they fought, I had McKee at like -145 or so. Like if we were to handicap the fight so far, I'd favor McKee right now. I am the Keith Schillen living in the moment right now. Very rare of me to do so, but geez, man.
I'm with you on that, Jay. I'm favoring McKee over Volkanovski. I mean, if we are going with the age-old ideology that the UFC champion is the best in the world at that weight class, I favor AJ McKee over that guy right now. And I think when we look at it from not in the MMA math sense, which I think we can play that game forever. And while that game has some merits to it, I want to divorce that of this argument in favor of McKee right now, because styles make fights. The same problems that Pitbull would have in front of McKee, the length, the size, the speed, I think Volkanovski has those same issues. I think he has just as much trouble getting on the inside and trying to bully McKee and trying to force the fight to go his way. I see McKee doing almost exactly the same thing to Volkanovski that he did to Pitbull, and maybe not as fast, but I think the end result would be the same. And if we're going to go by the number one featherweight in the UFC is the number one featherweight in the world, AJ McKee beats that guy, making him the number one featherweight in the world. I think the only wrinkle to that argument, Max Holloway would be the stylistic matchup that I think would give him the most trouble. God, man, I hope we see that. I don't think we deserve to see that. I don't think the world deserves that because there's too much ugliness in the world, particularly in our sport. Way too much ugliness, and we are not deserving of nice things such as that. But I think now we're running into potentially a new era in the sport. AJ McKee presents quite the opportunity for Bellator. You know, they've thrived in a sense off of homegrown stars. You know, you can look back to Eddie Alvarez, Hector Lombard to an extent. Pitbull became that as of recently. Douglas Lima, I think, enjoyed that to a certain extent as well. I mean, how does Bellator matchmake this guy now? How do they do this? What's a possible next direction for McKee to go in?
Is it funny that Bellator simultaneously made the proper, obviously, I mean, they couldn't not make the fight. It was a tournament, it was a tournament final. So there was no other option. Both men had won dominant fashion over their opponents all the way up the ladder. But they're out of ideas right now, unless they put him up against Pitbull. But do you want to see that fight at 145? Like, I'm of the mind of Duffy, who can elaborate on this more. I don't want to see an immediate title rematch when it isn't justified. I mean, yes, we can say that Pitbull had defended his title several times. He defended his title all the way through the tournament. But this was uncontroversial. This was walk him down, kick him in the head, choke him out. Regardless of if I think maybe Mike Beltran could have let the fight go a little more, so he could have gotten that Machida John Jones moment, and so we didn't have Eric Albarracin pulling his glasses off and his other pair of glasses, whatever he's doing with his that chain on his glasses now, and freak out about it. But they're stuck, because what do you do now with AJ McKee, who slew the Pitbull? Like, this is the kind of situation Conor McGregor ran into when he knocked out Jose Aldo. You beat the best featherweight of all time, and you smoked him. You can't run that back immediately, even though some of us thought maybe you could run that back. And then you're like, do you really have him go on and fight the number 4, number 5 guy? AJ McKee destroyed the guy who's destroyed everybody else. So it's going to be like the Cyborg Julia Budd situation, where Chris Cyborg came into Bellator, wrecked Julia Budd, who was the consensus best featherweight they had by a mile, and then they have to put her against Arlene Blenco's and Leslie Smith's, and we go, oh boy, that's going to be competitive as the line comes in at minus 1,500. I feel like Pitbull at 155 is all they have left, but please talk me off this ledge. Aaron, Ben, either of you guys, does McKee even have a long time left at Bellator? Like, did he kind of almost hurry up the end of his run with this?
Oh, allow me to step on some toes here, man, because I think we're forgetting that this is Bellator. This is the same promotion that has scoured the earth to find Uber drivers worthy of stepping in front of MVP. I think you can do that same sort of thing with McKee, with the featherweight division that you have in front of him. Like, Adam Borix is there. Mads Burnell, who I'm sure we'll bring up as well later on, since he fought in the co-main event of that card. There are possibilities, and not to mention the 155-pound title fight with Pitbull if you want to do a rematch there. The thing is, McKee is on a trajectory to be a serious star for that promotion. And what do you want to do with stars? You want to put them in the best positions possible and highlight them and boost them. Scott Coker talking about CBS putting on shows, McKee being a big factor in that. I don't see a scenario where they don't put someone in front of him that they know he's going to smoke in that main event and create a Sports Center moment.
Can I just real quick interject? They need to stop talking about AJ McKee going to boxing.
Shut it all the way down.
That shouldn't have been the first or second or fourth thing that Scott Coker said. What did AJ McKee do? He walked up, kicked Pitbull in the head, and choked him out. What application of those skills would fare him well in the boxing ring against a YouTube star? I'm sorry, go continue. Yeah. Carry on.
I would pay $55 to watch him kick one of the Paul brothers in the head.
Me too.
I'm just saying. Yeah. Especially if they were told it was a boxing match.
But unless they're talking about fighter pay, in which I agree with them, and then and spare their lives. Aaron, please.
This is such an easy one. Here. It's just such an easy one. I don't know why we're batting all these names around. The Pitbull fight at 155, because listen, Pitbull's going to want to face this guy again. He's going to want to prove that this was a fluke. But if you want to prove that it's a fluke, you need to put something up. And there's no reason for him to rematch for the 45 belt. You put up that 55 belt and you say, listen, if this kid wants to prove that he can beat me, at 155, let's see it, because that last fight was a fluke. I wasn't out. Whatever. Build it up however you want to build it. We know what happened over the weekend, but this is the only fight to make right now for AJ McKee. Make him a 2-division champion. AJ McKee to the moon. Let's go. I mean, this is the way it's got to be. And then after that, I think you have the ability to build up all these other prospects. In the meantime, you've got Usman Nurmagomedov coming up. You've got Hassan Magomed-Sharipov. You've got Aaron Pico. You've got Ed Ruth. You've got, Ruth is a 70-pounder, so never mind. Never mind Ed Ruth. Let's forget that one. But forget I even said it. But they've got all these like prospects that are in the shoot right now. Build these guys up. Let's go. I mean, let's put AJ McKee up against whoever the biggest name is right now. That's the only way that this is going to work for Bellator. I don't think that Mads Burnell makes any sense. I don't think that win was definitive enough. I don't think that people are really on the Mads Burnell train after that. Although I think that Emmanuel Sanchez is awesome, and I think that is a statement win. I just don't think that it did much for him. I don't think that it was, he didn't get a finish in that fight. People thought it was close. McCarthy thought should have been scored for Sanchez. I mean, listen, I just think that right now the easy thing to do is you put him against Pitbull again, because hey, then what happens if Pitbull wins at 155, right? Like now you're building a huge trilogy fight. You're putting steam behind this. That's the way you got to do this. I think that's the only way you play this, and I think it's the easy move to make. I think it is dependent a bit on Pitbull. I think that if Pitbull says, I need a little bit of time, I want to take some time away, I'm not going to defend my belt this year, then maybe if McKee wants to get in there and face somebody at 45 and defend the title, maybe it's a Mads Burnell, maybe it's whoever the next best guy is, in their opinion. Sure, make that fight. But I mean, right now, I think that if you had to make one fight for Bellator, I think you make it for the 55 championship against Pitbull.
And AJ McKee, after I think it was like Friday or something, when he was after making weight or whatever, was like, this is my last fight at 145, which I was a little on the fence about, because if that's the case, you just won a tournament at 145 and you're now the champion, and you're already saying you're not going to defend your belt because you're going to move to another weight class. I don't know if that is the champ aspirations, which, okay, that makes sense. But if it is 155, here's the best part about if that holds true. He hasn't fought anybody at 155. Like, he has a whole new slate. He doesn't have to worry about running into old tournament opponents or guys that won or lost in the semifinals or something like that. He has new opponents like Ben Henderson. Okay, I don't have a lot of options at lightweight, but still, my point is there.
Well, I mean, you do raise a good point with Ben Henderson. I mean, that's a name that holds over from the UFC, former champion, that while he is clearly not in his prime, that's a name that does look pretty good on your resume. And if you want to twist the knife deeper into the thigh of the UFC's featherweight division, say, hey, I beat a champion a weight class above you, I definitely can smash you guys too. Like there is something to that. So I'm not too mad at it. But fellas,
or hold on, Patricky Pitbull. Like a welcome to lightweight.
I'll buy that. I'll buy that.
Yeah, I'll buy that for $1. I'm not mad at that at all, man. I'm not mad at that at all. I like that a lot.
Bellator 272, family business.
Now,
put AJ McKee on a guy, or Antonio McKee on there or something.
I mean, Pitbull is ranked. Patricky Pitbull's ranked number 1 behind his brother, right? So, I mean, I think if you want to stoke the flames a little bit, and Patricio doesn't want to fight right away, make that one happen, and then let Patricky try to get revenge.
Yeah. Or the best part about that is if Patricio wants another crack at it, he can just pretend to be Patricky and we won't know the difference. So
just a fake mustache.
Yeah, I mean, when they do the same, like the goofy mustache together, we can't tell them apart. So, it doesn't matter. Which just one of the pit bulls can step in there and pretend to be the other one. That's great for me. Now guys, I do have another question to ask related to McKee. His entire career has taken place in Bellator. Scott Coker and his father, Antonio McKee, have done a fantastic job of sort of building him up. And as we mentioned before, like, he passed every test with flying colors. And this was a very, very slow burn to the moment that we saw Saturday night. Where do you think he stacks among the homegrown fighters that we've seen in the sport's history? Like, where is he in that hierarchy, fellas?
Easy number 1 to me.
I mean, you got to consider Patricio, though. Like, Patricio, to me, has had such a decorated career. And even though AJ beat him, look at all the accomplishments Patricio's had as a Bellator fighter. Because before this, I think Patricio was really the guy that people looked at when you thought Bellator. Like, this guy is Bellator.
Oh, yeah.
He's the definition of what Bellator is. I feel like writing him off just after that one loss is, I mean, I think that if you look at AJ McKee, he's definitely one of the best prospects we've ever seen in this sport. Now that he's a champion, I think that he's become this kind of household name among people that are really into MMA. But I have a lot of trouble taking him ahead of Patricio Pitbull in terms of homegrown guys, just because of all the rich resume of Patricio Pitbull. But I think your argument's fair.
I'm gonna throw a different name out there for homegrown talent. I want to throw Tito Ortiz into that mix. That man started his career in the UFC, actually took his first fight as an amateur, became champion, became the face of the sport for a long time, pushed it into a new era, multiple title defenses, and still holds as one of the best champions in the organization's history. I don't think McKee has reached that level yet as far as homegrown level. And of course, you know, yes, we know Tito went to multiple organizations after his tenure at the UFC, but his impact on the sport, having been an 0-0 fighter stepping into the octagon to champion, I think it's very difficult to ignore.
Is that how we're defining homegrown? Is like you have to have your first fight with that promotion? Because then Patricio is out. Because I think Patricio had fights before he was in Bellator. But yeah, because I mean, if we're starting it from 0-0, there are just the pool is almost empty. I mean, we don't have a lot of people to choose
Amir Sadala is in the top 10. Then.
Yes,
yeah, exactly.
I don't want to consider it like you have to be 0-0 in the organization, but the organization did groom you.
Then you got to talk about John Jones. You got to talk about Francis Ngannou. You got to talk about GSP.
I think BJ Penn because his MMA debut was in the UFC. You know, he went over to Rumble in the Rock and he fought Machida. I think it was like K1 Heroes or something. But it is a tough question.
What about Kayla Harrison? I mean, Kayla Harrison in the PFL is like these are names you got to kind of consider if we're going to talk homegrown. I mean, I would put GSP in the conversation, even though he was the champion in TKO. It's a regional promotion. John Jones, same kind of thing. He was a year and a half into his MMA career when he signed with the UFC. Yeah. So, I mean, if we're going to do that, then it's almost certainly John Jones. I mean, if he's I consider him the greatest of all time, then there's your answer. But if you're talking about somebody who starts their first ever fight in Bellator or the UFC or the PFL, like, there's just not a lot of people to choose from.
Yeah. All right. Good points there. Well, now, I mean, we've talked a lot about AJ McKee. We talked a lot about Bellator, and we haven't talked a lot about the UFC.
There was a UFC card?
Yeah, exactly. This was Bellator put on, at least by the metrics that we have in our bubbles. And, you know, and I'm not talking about site analytics or TV ratings or everything, just the way the social media trends, the conversations that we have amongst fellow diehards and media professionals and whatnot. Bellator was the big game in town. Do we think with McKee as a star in this promotion, with the backing of CBS, the backing of Viacom in general, is this something that can become more commonplace?
I'll jump in here. On select occasions, obviously, in terms of the in-cage product, in terms of the stakes, in terms of the actual entertainment it delivered, the Bellator 263 absolutely trounced the UFC's fight card. But that was an example of the UFC's worst card of the year against one of Bellator's probably 4 or 5 best cards in the history of their company. Like, of course, like David's going to nail Goliath between the eyes when the relative effort levels and investment levels are like that. All I know is I spent the evening flipping back and forth frantically between browser tabs as, you know, I tried to do my evening's work. And every time I flipped to Bellator, it was a live ass crowd, like going ham for like some fights between fighters in matchups that I generally cared about. One of the best things Bellator did with this card was not overstuff it with literally 18 or 19 fights and a bunch of like 1-on-1 local ticket sellers on the undercard. It was lean and mean in a way that Bellator usually does not manage to do, even for their better cards. And every time I flip back to the UFC, it was people on 2-fight losing streaks, like throwing down in an empty hall. Like, the Bellator event just felt much bigger and just generally was superior. but it's something that Bellator, they really only have the ammunition to do that maybe once or twice a year.
It certainly helped that the biggest ticket seller was in the main event too.
Yeah,
definitely
he was home
notable
too.
Yeah. AJ McKee, a homegrown guy from Los Angeles County. They showed up in droves to cheer him on. So I think that definitely helped Bellator be a little more comfortable by not stacking that card with a bunch of regional talent. Jay, sorry to step on your toes.
No, it's all good. Well, you hear like the walkouts. I mean, just pushing past the fact that the music was a nightmare, like the dogs barking and the chains rattling, moving on beyond that. The crowd was Pitbull is a beloved Bellator champion. If you put him at Thackerville in Oklahoma, if you put him at the Mohegan Sun when people are there, you put him at somewhere like the 3 Arena,
the Stanford Pentagon.
Yes,
in Sioux
if you
Falls.
put him at the Stanford Pentagon, people will be excited about seeing Patricio Pitbull because I know what he's going to do, and someone might, have to be stretchered out. That's the idea that they have in their head, is this crazy thing's going to happen, and it was all McKee, and that was a very impressive and surprising thing. But you know what? And I said this on last week's show, and I knew it was going to be the case. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. The UFC outdrew the Bellator card by at least a factor of 2-1. The worst UFC card of the year on paper. I mean, like you couldn't struggle more. There was literally 2 fighters that were in the rankings, and they fought each other. I believe that there was. I think there were 20 fighters on the card. 3 of them had winning UFC records, and 2 of them were in the main event. And one of them was Brian Barberina, who, he's now a 500 UFC fighter. It is amazing how that works, because the UFC, the name, that's what Dana White kind of always wanted to do. People don't tune into the stars. They tune in for the UFC and to see Dana, I guess, and shill for him on Twitter. But it's the UFC has the product that we're the UFC, we're in town, and we're going to blow the doors off. And like, you can look at metrics and analytics and stuff, like on the Sherdog forums, the UFC show pounded the Bellator card. And that's crazy to me because of how, we're having a legitimate conversation 10 minutes ago if AJ McKee's the best featherweight in the world. And there's a claim for that. And yet the Bellator can't get in the door, which makes me think that Ben is right to a degree, but in terms of the limited ammunition, the only ability they can do to bring a mega card to the table, Bellator has the ability to make a pay-per-view caliber card. They have the roster. They'd probably have to dump a couple title fights on it and then burn subsequent cards to be like, well, we have all our champions fighting, so we can't do anything like KSW did in their Coliseum show when they had like 6 or 7 title fights, and the next several events were just devoid of meaning because they had thrown that on there. See also UFC cards with triple title headers, and then you're like, well, we don't have a relevant main event for the next 3.5 weeks or 4 months or whatever. Bellator with AJ McKee has the ability to have a true crowd drawing, pay-per-view drawing star if they do it right. If they follow a path like Aaron prescribed to always make the biggest fight for McKee, always the best next guy, and not just the next guy, because there's a very big distinction between the next guy and this is the best possible opponent we can match him against. That they can make him a star as long as they don't burn everybody else on the way and overstack his AJ McKee cards to then make their next 6 shows at Mohegan Sun and Thackerville, minor offerings. So they have the potential.
Well, here's the thing. How big do you guys think AJ McKee right now is Bellator's biggest star? Probably, right? Like he's at least up there.
Yeah,
how many followers? How many followers does he have on Twitter in your mind? Don't look. Just give me a ballpark.
I'm 40, not sure, but I know he's not very active on Twitter. Like he barely touches.
He was active last week. He's active. So you said what, 40,000, Jay?
I'm just guessing 40,000.
What's your guess, Ben?
My guess would be somewhere like in 40 or 50,000. But I'm going to guess his Instagram followers are much more comparable to the top UFC fighters.
I would say before this weekend, I'd put him probably around 10,000.
And how many now?
It's 50, 60 sounds about right.
Okay. So last week he had 3,200 followers on his unverified Twitter account. And today he has 5,200 followers on his unverified Twitter
Holy
account.
smokes.
So if everybody's thinking that Bellator moved the needle this past weekend, like, we're in a bubble, guys. We're in a bubble.
Oh,
we have to remember that.
My man.
The UFC is MMA to almost 90% of sports viewers, 95%. Like, they don't go outside of those walls. They're like quarantined during COVID in terms of the MMA world. They are not leaving their home. They are not leaving their home. They're staying at home for safety, in their safe place, which is watching the UFC. So we have to stop overestimating how big Bellator is. We know how good the talent are. I think that if you were to take every UFC champion right now, there's somebody outside the promotion that can probably hang with them. I mean, at 170, maybe. Hi, Ant's kid. Nice to see you. And I mean, you could probably find somebody outside the promotion that can. Like, I think Adriano Moraes could hang with Brandon Moreno, maybe even beat Brandon Moreno. I think that Kayla Harrison and Cyborg would give Amanda Nunes a good fight at 145. I know we've seen the Cyborg fight already. But I mean, I just think that there's a lot of really good talent outside the UFC that can challenge like the UFC talent, but nobody really knows about them and nobody really agrees with that. No, a lot of people think that if you're the UFC champion, there's certainly nobody outside of the promotion that can challenge you. And I think that we have to temper we have to curb our enthusiasm. You know, we have to enter Larry David's headspace when it comes to Bellator, because listen, these are just the facts. And I'm not trying to poo-poo Bellator. I think it's great. They're building a lot of young talent. I think they've got a lot of great young talent in their stable that we're going to see a lot of. But I think we just have to be realistic about it. And when you say that the UFC does better numbers, it's because, again, I just think that most people think that the UFC is MMA.
Oh, yeah.
I think also access has a lot to do with it. I mean, the ESPN, I mean, this was on big ESPN.
Yep.
So you think about the amount of bars to just have it on. You're in the airport and it's just on, as opposed to Showtime, you know, which is a paid service that's on top of however much your cable service or your streaming service costs. So accessibility definitely is an option. Ben, do you off the top of your head have a estimate of AJ McKee's Instagram following?
I don't.
I know how much he has.
Okay. Because he is very, very inactive on Twitter, and he only seems to be active when it's around fight week. The only times I remember seeing him tweeting on some regular occasions, and this is only because he followed me back after I interviewed him once, was when he beat Georgie Kakari, and that was like only time I saw some real activity. And then he goes dark, and then he's got another fight, so he tweets for a couple days, and then he goes dark. And I think now it's just like his Instagram being forwarded to his Twitter. I think if he showed like the personality of his teammate, Pretty Boy Taylor, that would do something. I mean, the fact that the guy hasn't even tried to get verified, like, so you see how little effort he's put into in their Twitter. I mean, you guys are verified.
I know, and
so I'm going to throw some names at you, and I want you to tell me if you think AJ McKee has more or less Instagram followers than that person.
All right,
Macy Barber, more or less than Macy Barber?
Oh, less than Barber.
Less.
He's got about a quarter of what Macy Barber has, a little bit more, like almost like a third of what Macy Barber has in terms of followers. Just give me a UFC name. I'm going to just throw a random UFC fighter at me.
Michael Chiesa.
Okay, Michael Chiesa. So Michael Chiesa has 60,000 more followers than AJ McKee does on Instagram. Like, so we're still talking about like pedestrian UFC, not to call their performances pedestrian, but like kind of, you know, more middle of the road, barely ranked in some cases UFC fighters. Like Claudia Gadelha has 10 times more followers than him, but I think that might be for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, AJ McKee has 96,000 followers on Instagram, which is a good number, but at the same time, like, it's still not up there with a lot of the UFC talent.
And that's fewer than I would have expected, actually. Like, I withdraw my objection to the description of AJ McKee's social media footprint in light of that. I would have expected him to have, probably about 250,000. So get with it, AJ McKee. You can only do so much by destroying everybody they put in front of you. Like, and it doesn't surprise me that he did some tweeting around the Karahanyan fight. They were probably like, dude, that was 8 seconds of work. You want your check? Like, go tweet some,
And here's another thing. Bellator was on YouTube in many countries, like including Canada. We got to watch it. So it was streamed 1 day ago, and it has 204,000 views, which is not a good number. I mean, like the prelims have 203,000 views, which is surprising to me. It's 1,000 less than the actual main card. But I mean, if you're taking every country that gets this on YouTube, and I don't know if it's just the Canadian numbers that would be, but I think it's every country that has access to it on YouTube. Because if you look it up in America, it's not gonna pop up for you. It's because it's geo-locked. But 204,000 people is not a lot of people to watch. Like, I have YouTube videos on TSN that have more views than that, which is pat myself on a little Barry Horowitz action. But I mean, still, it's just not a very big number. And I just think we overestimate how many people there are outside of the UFC bubble that consume MMA. And I wish it was more. I love the sport. I was so stoked for that fight. But I think, again, like every reporter that you spoke to was super excited about McKee versus Pitbull. But just outside of our space, it's just not a big number.
And there's a reason why promoters always want to co-promote with the UFC. And Scott
Exactly.
Coker will name drop UFC champions, be like, so-and-so would beat UFC champion Alpha. You know, of course, because you're in the headlines now. And at the same time, there is no financial interest the UFC has to co-promote with Bellator or Ryzen or any of those PFL. There's nothing to be gained by them. They'd be kind of they're shouldering the load.
Yeah.
If Bellator loaned AJ McKee to them and they could promote it, that they still wouldn't do that because they don't want to have a guy from Bellator come in and beat their guy, even if it wasn't co-promoted. If they were like, we're going to give you AJ McKee, we'll pay his purse for this fight. We want to have him face Alexander Volkanovski. That's like a hard no if you're the UFC. Am I right?
Yeah. I mean, the flashbacks to Chuck in the Pride tournament, and like, now our star guy, our key knockout artist, has now been devalued by a rival promotion. So, it wouldn't make sense for the UFC to agree to something like that.
It's something we laughed about after it happened, and I want to bring it up again. Recall when Michael Chandler made his UFC debut, Bruce Buffer announced him as the former Bellator champion, with obvious direction to say that, because if he got trounced by Dan Hooker, a top 10 guy, this guy got beaten by our top 10 guy, our champion would slay him. And when Chandler fought for the UFC title,
did not mention that at all.
I was going to ask. I didn't know.
That was one thing we were very keenly watching for that on this show. We had a thorough conversation about whether Bruce Buffer was going to announce him as former Bellator champion when he made the entrance for his title fight in the UFC. So, all right, fellas. Oh, yeah.
Just a real quick, I'm thinking all the way back to when Lyman Good got bounced in the fight-ins on that season of Tough, and they made sure to edit in like the shot of Dana at the table going, so that was the Bellator champ, huh? As like Lyman Good failed to get into the Tough house. Like there is no level of petty to which they will not step.
Who beat Lyman Good? Now I'm trying to remember who it was. It was somebody pretty good, I would imagine. I don't even remember. I remember that happening. I just don't remember who beat him.
It wasn't even someone that good. That was, I keep saying good, and his name is Good, but like it was in his kind of wilderness years between when he was tearing people up in Bellator and when he finally has kind of become a decent welterweight again in the UFC.
Ian Stevens, that's a bad one.
My AC just knocked my Captain America picture down, so I just gotta
that's an earthquake.
And y'all get the nice side of the tubing instead.
Beautiful.
So that's wonderful. So fellas, I mean, we did have a UFC card, so let's go ahead and give that just a little bit of love. I'm going to give everybody the opportunity to give one takeaway that you had from that card, billed as UFC on ESPN 28, featured Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland in the main event. Sean Strickland cruising to a dominant decision over the former second place in the Tough House. My takeaway is that Uriah Hall is who we keep having to believe that he is. Like, every time we have hope that this man has kind of turned the corner, he reminds us that he is the physical specimen who mentally just cannot get into gear when it counts the most. And this was, I think, aside from the loss to Kelvin Gastelum in that Tough finale, probably his most deflating defeat. I would think even more so than the Paulo Costa fight, a fight which he on paper he really should have just steamrolled Costa. and mentally let it get away from him. But this time, Sean Strickland beating him from pillar to post over the course of 5 rounds. Uriah Hall is exactly who he has shown himself to be over the years. Aaron, what's your takeaway from that event?
Well, I'm going to kind of piggyback on that, and I'm going to say that Sean Strickland is a viable title challenger, in my opinion. Like, not right now, but down the line, you've got a guy that now has, a 5-round win over Uriah Hall. It's not the most impressive thing in the world, but he's a guy that Israel has not fought yet. He's got a couple screws loose, and he's a guy that's going to throw a lot of volume at Israel and would be good fodder to get knocked out, like flatlined by Israel if it goes Israel's way that night. And I think that is still an intriguing matchup down the road that we could see. Is if Sean Strickland gets 1, maybe 2 more wins, like we could see him against Israel. And I don't think that it's that far-fetched to believe that. I think that he looked really good against Uriah. Like you said, Uriah didn't win a single round against him. And Uriah is good. Like, Uriah is a good fighter. But, Sean Strickland is something different that we haven't really seen Israel face before, which is like a good volume striker who's going to be in his face, who's going to walk forward, who doesn't really care what his opponent's game plan is. He just wants to be the best Sean Strickland that night. And he's a guy that's not going to be afraid to jump into the fire against Israel, which I think is something that is a good recipe for the UFC either way, regardless of how the fight goes. I think having a guy that's going to pressure Israel is a very intriguing proposition for the UFC down the road if he can win 1 or 2 more fights against a guy like maybe a Kelvin Gastelum, a Whitaker, somebody that's kind of that next tier up at middleweight. I don't think he's that far away.
I worry a prominence for Sean Strickland will actually hurt him because he'll be getting more spotlight as he says the things he says that come out of his head.
Right. Yeah.
And like when a New York Post, somebody that doesn't really cover MMA that often, shout out Scott Fontana, but when that comes in, UFC challenger says he will kill the champion. You're like, oh, I don't know.
I would pay to see him and Jared Cannonier just have a debate, like in the middleweight division, just a middleweight debate.
And then they can fight in the middle of a meth cooking trailer.
Yeah. Have them
they could
fight
even be
after.
talking about different kinds of rocks. Like,
I was going to say UFC, UFC 292.
Cannonier could pull his magic rock out of his pocket, and then
and they can debate over QAnon conspiracies or something. I really that Sean Strickland, just let's sign a petition to ban him from microphones. Period. Ben,
the opposite is going to happen.
Oh my God.
It will be. He's the spotlight guy now.
Let me show you guys something. This is my. I interviewed Sean last week, and I was doing a running tally because when I send my things to TSN, I have to. If somebody swears, they have to beep it.
Yeah,
Here's my swearing running tally from Sean Strickland when he was last week. I still have that in front of me. So I didn't send it in. I ended up using it for the podcast, but I couldn't have one of my poor editors have to go through editing a Sean Strickland interview. Yeah, basically. He said some wacky stuff, though. I would recommend the interview if you want to hear some wild stuff about how he's a predator and he can't live in society with other people. So once his career ends, he wants to move out into like the mountains where he can just be not be a danger to society, which I thought was very honest and self-aware, at least.
Just eat raw wolf meat or something. Ben, can you share with us a takeaway from UFC on ESPN 28?
I had some, but I'm going to instead use my time to just stay on this topic because we've seen it happen over and over again. I mean, the old saying is that the poor are crazy, the rich merely eccentric. There's a similar dynamic in MMA because the difference between old War Machine and new War Machine, between old Mike Perry, new Mike Perry, even old Diego Sanchez, new Diego Sanchez, where they go from weird to alarming is whether they're still winning fights. And that is, I mean, that's a horrible and unfair and kind of cruel dynamic. But this is kind of like, we cringe as long as Strickland is still winning fights. Once he isn't winning fights anymore, if and whenever that comes, this just becomes really depressing. And it becomes depressing in a way that we could have, should have, and probably did see coming all along. Like, he sounds like a fucking sociopath.
I think he says that he is. He basically says that.
Yeah. Self-awareness. He's got it. Jay, what's your big takeaway from I think UFC Vegas 33? I think was the hashtag.
I guess if we're going down the self-awareness route, he should stay away from Josh Fabia. When it comes to UFC Vegas 33 / UFC ESPN 28 / Fight Night Hall Strickland / there's these cards have too many. This is the card naming convention that just we broke it, and I don't think we can fix it again unless we just blow it up from the beginning. Isn't about any particular fight, although I really do want to talk about some dramatic things that happened. It's that I don't think the UFC knows what to do about COVID anymore. The protocols have completely disintegrated to the point of a shocking, alarming way. Because Aaron, you're familiar with this. You attended. Well, no, your last event was in March 2020.
That's right.
Okay, so we have all. We haven't attended a live event to deal with the thing. Actually, wait, Duffy, you Houston?
I have. Yeah,
that's right. You did in Houston.
Why do you think they're coming back to Houston? Why do you think after saying that, no, all of our pay-per-views for the rest of the year are going to be in Vegas, they all of a sudden started putting ones in Texas? Why is that?
And here's the problem is that the COVID protocols, I mean, I don't know if they're being enforced, but you can also say, well, they're not being enforced. And how do you know this? Because there are fighters on Tuesday who have not entered the country and are trying to deal with this situation. How does the UFC... And how do my original title of this little segment in my head was, man, fighters are dumb. And I say that with respect to fighters, because how do you not know you need a visa to get into the country on fight week? How is that not taken care of? How is your manager, your team? How have you not been that? If I were a fighter, I'd probably think maybe I should be able to fight first. But it's more about COVID and this COVID situation. COVID protocols. There was a fight that a gentleman on this panel announced that the Good and Stolze fight was off on Saturday, and I believe it's this guy right here that accurately reported that the UFC had canceled that fight due to COVID protocols. Test whatever the specifics it may have been, the UFC simply left as COVID protocols, which in itself is so vague our heads explode, and then said the fight's back on because they cleared the COVID protocols that had canceled the fight. What? So we don't know if that meant there was contact tracing. We don't know if that meant corners, people, whomever were around them that had COVID. We don't know. And we are the people that are supposed to know these things because the UFC will report these things. No, actually, no, they won't. Hani Yahya reported he had COVID. UFC didn't say anything to anybody. I believe that Kyung Ho Kang, I believe he found out through Yaya's post on Instagram. What are we doing here? If COVID is still a factor, Delta in the United States is spiking. Aaron, you are all set, my man. Stay there, stay where you are. The US is a volcano. It's trapped in a nightmare. It's like Florida and Vegas and parts of that place down there in the south that is going to be hosting an event this weekend in H-Town are just spiking. And the UFC seems to have given up, which I guess gives us 10 or 15 fight cards that the UFC will stack the deck knowing that COVID's going to take half of their matchups away. I don't know what the answer is, but I think the UFC has to answer something because it's not going away.
And further to Hani Yahya, Combats did a story where they asked every Brazilian fighter in the UFC if they had a vaccine, were planning on getting a vaccine, or were not planning on getting a vaccine. And Hani Yahya's name was on the not planning on getting a vaccine list. So, I mean, I think that one thing that is interesting that we have to look at is you've got the NFL coming out and saying, if there's a COVID outbreak among your players, you're going to forfeit games.
Yes.
Like, we've got workplaces that are able to put triggers in place to make sure that they can safeguard their workplace.
Yeah.
Are the UFC going to do that? Because, listen, I know that optically it would be a bad look for them among a lot of the MMA fans if they were to say you need to get a vaccine in order to compete. But at the same time, you're trying to run a business, a promotion, and you're trying to make sure that your events that you're putting all the risk into, like in terms of finances, you're taking all the risk if you're the promotion. And if you're going to put these events on every week and you're going to have fighters who are a vaccine hesitant crowd, I hate to say it, but from speaking to different fighters, I can say that there's a lot of vaccine hesitancy among the athletes, among athletes in general, a lot of the time, because listen, athletes know every single thing they're putting into their body a lot of the time, and they want to be careful. And I can understand that. I can rationalize that in my head. But if you're a promotion and you want to make sure that your events are safeguarded and you're not going to have 6 fights fall off every fight week, maybe it's time to put together some sort of policy where you're going to be able to at least protect your own investment.
Yeah. I mean, it all starts from the top. I mean, the leader of at least the figurehead of the UFC won't wear a mask, like refuses to wear a mask, no matter where he is, no matter what the circumstances are. So I don't think we can expect a whole lot of forward thinking from the UFC in this, because, you know, it comes down from the top. And I guess in fairness to them too, I mean, a lot of the local governments have no idea what to do now. Like their protocols are all over the place. I'm in Los Angeles County and they have no clue what they're doing. They don't know what, like, they're reinstating mask mandates, but they're not really enforcing them. They, you know, they're encouraging vaccines, but, you know, people are being shunned if you're requiring them. When nobody has any idea what's going on. So I think the UFC is just kind of using that as cover to just do what they want to do, which is nothing, you know, about this whole thing, and much to the detriment of their cards. But hey, at the same time, it doesn't matter if you have enough fights to fulfill your contractual obligation to ESPN and get that guaranteed check anyway. So they really don't have an incentive. In fact, it's probably financially damning to them to go through with all these protocols, because I'm sure it's very costly. So we save money.
Well, if they are paying fighters, I mean, if they're paying the fighters that are making weight and not testing positive, then I mean,
paying fighters,
they might be saving money by pulling fights off the card. Probably. Who knows, right? I mean, ultimately, who knows?
Possibly. You have to pay win bonuses. So
you'll notice that there was a specific lack of fighter alpha, fighter bravo, whatever, is being paid their show money, because that's something that, you know, has been. I think the Bellator card, one of the fighters wasn't cleared medically, and the Bellator very smartly said fighter that was able to compete and made weight, it was being paid his show money. The silence. There's so much silence that I have gone deaf and beyond some at this point.
All right, fellas. So let's keep things pushing here. I kind of want to jump the format just a little bit, because we already are going down this train. So let's go ahead and transition into the best titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we share something that surprised us or ironically did not over the course of the past week. I'll begin because we were on the topic, COVID protocols. Now, as I said, I'm in Los Angeles County. I typically go to every Bellator event that is at the Forum. I've been cage side for a couple of things that have been pretty cool, and I enjoy the Forum. I enjoy Bellator at the Forum. I think the Forum is probably the best fight venue that I've ever worked in. However, I decided not to go this time, and watching the broadcast showed me exactly why. The official mandate in California is that you must wear a mask while indoors, at least LA County. I can't speak on California as a whole, but LA County, you must wear a mask indoors. Well, as Mauro Ranallo on the broadcast is saying how following LA County protocol, thousands of masked fans have packed into the Forum, literally behind him as he's uttering those words, not a single person wearing a mask, not one at all. I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is exactly what I expected. This is exactly why I decided I'm going to sit this one out. I'm going to watch it at home. I've got a newborn daughter. I've got an immune compromised mother-in-law in the house. I am not going there, as much as I want to see this fight, as much as I want to be part of what turned out to be a history-making evening. I had to sit this one out. I'm not surprised. Aaron, can you share with us your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Yeah, I was very, very much unsurprised by the fact that Khabib's fighters all went undefeated, that they all won. I mean, like, did anybody think that any of them had a shot of even losing? That would be my least surprising thing from the weekend. I mean, Khabib, people talk about how good of a coach Khabib is, but man, I mean, these guys from Dagestan are just absolute killers. And I mean, these guys just ran through their competition. So shout out to Coach Khabib, and I'm not surprised.
I think let's see, there were 4 Dagestani fighters. 3 of them were betting favorites of like minus 100 or higher, like 9-1 favorites.
1,000, you mean? Minus 1,000, yeah.
No. All right, Ben, share with us your I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week.
Okay, sure. I'm going to talk a little bit about Cheyanne Buys, winner in the UFC Vegas 33 co-main event. But first, I want to do a little historical time framing. If you've been a fan of the sport long enough, there are different eras, after which somebody is a noob to you. Like there's the people who are like, well, where were you when UFC 1 happened? Well, unless you're one of about 55,000 people, you were doing whatever you were doing that day because fuck you didn't watch UFC 1. UFC 2 is the one that like actually blew things up. Anyway, it might be, hey, where were you at UFC 33 when the pay-per-view like went off? I would say mercifully in the middle of the Ortiz Matyushenko title fight. For many people, it's, hey, where were you at the Tough One finale or its immediate aftermath? Where were you at UFC 100, UFC 200? In light of what Ms. Buys made news for this weekend, I'm going to say, where were you in 2009 when Pat Barry knocked out Anthony Hardonk, won double bonuses for knockout of the night and fight of the night, and then just tearfully on the mic talked about how important it was as just a personal vindication for the way he'd been treated at Mike's gym in Holland back in the day when he and Hardonk were both teammates, and then saying, hey, at the beginning of the week, I had $49 in my checking account. I've been eating rice and ketchup all week.
Rice.
Yeah, ketchup and rice. Thank goodness he could get all the pizza rolls he wanted after those bonus checks cleared. But if you were shocked, if you were offended by the fact that Cheyanne Buys, a UFC fighter and spouse of a UFC fighter, like had gone deeply into debt just to get lodgings in Vegas to be able to properly train for their fights, if you're shocked by that, or if you find it brave or charming, where were you in 2009? Because this has been happening forever. Like the UFC's philosophy of just paying its general rank and file not a living wage, to the point where, many of its fighters keep a full-time job. Stipe Miocic as a champ keeping a full-time job is, a bit of an aberration. He probably just wanted to keep the health insurance, and teeth, chiclets are expensive. But this has been the thing forever. So I'm calling you a Cheyanne Buys noob if you have any kind of commentary on, on what happened Saturday night. It's just, this is the UFC's business model. If you think it's charming, it's been around forever, and fuck you. If you think it's offensive, hey, join the club.
Yeah, it's just, great news for PR, just coming off of that $100 million crypto deal that the fighters get absolutely nothing of. Just spot on timing there. Jay, what's your I'm not surprised Mr. Falcons moment this week?
So I've had it with these Mr. Falconing UFCs and Bellators on this Mr. Falconing train. We're leaving the country. We're leaving the continent. We are going very, very far east, my friends. We're going to Georgia. And I do not mean Georgia, the state. Oh, no. No, I mean something far better. So every now and then, I think I even used this, every now and then something magical happens that defies your expectations on what you think can be an MMA event and what you think can be a good decision. So over this past week, I believe it was Wednesday, it took place, an organization called the Georgian Fighting Championship event held an outdoor event in the scenic mountains of its country, in an outdoor, uncovered, beautiful, like Esther Lynn would have a field day taking shots of the landscape and everything like that. And the prospects, they were prospects. They're local Georgian fighters. So 2-1 men and women, nothing crazy special, nothing essential. I will provide a link. We can have a link in the little YouTube description if you like. The event was held in pouring rain. The whole event took place in a rainstorm, and the fighters competed in the rain. So there's an old event from a California-based organization called King in the Cage for an early event they held called Wet and Wild that was notorious because it was an outdoor event that had some... Anyways, every fight on the card was comically, magnificently impacted by the fighters just sliding and flopping and dancing. It was... I actually broke my heart as a fight, a fight guy, to watch these fighters just slipping and sliding on the cage, and not somebody going, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this right now. Hey, maybe let's put a tarp up over the top. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. No, they held the whole card. The entire card happened. Every fight was a nightmare. Every fight was a run forward. Something happens. I slip. The other guy dives on top, hits an armbar, 20 seconds because it's the pouring rain. And it was glorious. And I implore you to watch the madness. And that's why I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcons, that it's 2021 and we still have wonderful gifts that the MMA world gives to us.
MMA gonna MMA.
Yeah, that was funny. Seeing
every
the
fight
amount
should
of
be a no contest.
setups and submissions was
every
beautiful.
single fight should be a no contest. But
like the only thing that was missing from that was a Fight Circus banner. That was it. That was the only thing we're missing.
That or like Benny Hill music or something. It was just it was a comedy of errors, guys.
Oh man, that was great stuff. All right, so we're gonna move on now to shallow cuts. We each will have a minute to answer a question, but we're going to turn it over to Mr. Bronsteter, who is going to assign the questions to each of us. And let me make sure the clock is ready. 1 minute to answer the questions. Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you now. Who gets the first question?
I'm going to give it to Ben, although your mic was cutting out on me, so I don't know what I'm talking about here. I missed
sorry.
Basically your entire preamble.
Okay. Well then.
It's time for shallow cuts.
Yes, thank you, Jay. Yeah. All right, Jay. So
I was trying to salvage it and go along with the flow, but I didn't want to make a total.
Hey, it's beautiful, man. You're a true professional. That was actually pretty smooth. Jay, take over for me if you can.
All right, shallow cuts. It is your turn, my friend. You assign all the questions to everybody, and I believe you mentioned Ben. If you'd like to assign the first question to whomever, floor is yours.
Okay. Am I asking Ben a question?
Yes, sir.
About anything MMA related this past week?
No, one of the four that are on the program. If you've got it.
Okay,
if you don't have it open,
I got to pull it up, guys. I'm sorry.
It's chaos. Be kind.
Oh, you know what? Just give
a random question. I had it open a minute ago.
Yeah, hit it.
Yeah, let's do a random question.
Okay, hold on. I've got it. So what is it? Of all the fights at lightweight, is the newly announced Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler the most exciting possible option?
Let's do it.
Have at it, Duffy.
Okay.
I sure think so. It's two guys who, on paper, could have a title fight in their next fight, but whoever wins that, it'll become more unambiguous. Chandler lost in a title challenge just a couple months ago, but he lost in a way that doesn't make me say, okay, I know how that's going to end all 10 times they fight, because he was this close to being your UFC lightweight champion. I absolutely want to see that again. I just want to see someone else get a chance first. We're going to get that. So, and the same for Gaethje. Gaethje is probably the most unfairly excluded of all the top 5 lightweights in the UFC, and the one with the most legitimate grievance in the post-Khabib era. So I love this as a fight. It's good. On paper, it's just an all-time banger, and I definitely want to see whoever wins, get a title shot in their next fight out. I love this one.
Oh, very nice. And
I found the questions, by the way. Just the lineup's jumping around a little bit, so I've got the questions now. But yeah, we're all good now. I'm back on track.
There it is.
I tend to go off script sometimes, so yeah. All right, Aaron, who's up next, and what question will they be answering?
All right, Ant. Can grappler Goiti Yamauchi make moves up the ladder as his hands get better?
All right. So yeah, I think he can. I don't see why not. It's just that we're looking at a strange thing where this was a catch weight fight, so it can't really hold that much weight at lightweight. But I think he's good enough to start climbing the ladder. You matchmake him appropriately, and if we're gonna go back to our AJ McKee Pitbull conversations, this is a guy who's exciting enough. This is a guy who has enough variety and skills to where Bellator can put him on the poster next to either one of those gentlemen and say, this is the next guy up, and we'll accept it. So I'm okay with him being talked about in that conversation, but still just a little bit too soon for me.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I've always loved his game. All right. For you, Jay, is Usman Nurmagomedov the next Nurmagomedov great in the making?
Oh man. I was impressed by his performance. To use the opposite of GSP's famous statement. Now, Manny Murrow isn't a world beater per se, but I've seen what he's capable of, and I thought, okay, this guy might be able to hang. He might make it a problem for Nurmagomedov. He might be able to get in there, and he's resilient enough to take what he could get. Except that didn't happen at all. He got kneed in the chest and went, "Oh my God, I made a horrible decision. It's just I made a huge mistake." Usman is, I think I said this to Duffy earlier. Usman Nurmagomedov has the potential to be like because people seem to look at Khabib and go, man, if only he finished his fights more. Even though he finished tons of fights, Usman has that streak. He has the presence and he has the pop. He has the striking ability that makes me think he could be like the striking version of Khabib. So I am high on him, but we will need to see him tested against resilient opposition that can take it, like the opponents that can handle the strikes. I wouldn't say the Yamauchi versus Nurmagomedov would be a good fight because I think Yamauchi's higher, but at the same time, I really like that fight because Yamauchi with hands plus Nurmagomedov that has also developed his hands. This is the future is bright for Usman.
All right, good answer there. Aaron, one question left for you. Actually, we have two questions left in the bank, but you've got one to spare. So which one feels like something you want to talk about more?
Shoot me the Nicco Montano question.
All right, cool. Just for formality's sake, I'll ask you the question, and then you go ahead and give us your thoughts. Is the Phil weight cut for Nicco Montoya the end of her UFC career, Aaron?
I think it is. I think that listen, she was the 125-pound champion to weigh in at 142 or whatever it is. And with all the layoffs, and if you look at her different fights that have fallen out over the years, it seems like it's always on her. It's not like her opponent had an injury or anything along those lines. And I like Nicco. I've dealt with her many times. I interviewed her last week. And I think that she's a really good fighter when she actually gets in there. But she's had 2 UFC fights, 2, since the flyweight division was basically started, and she was the champion. She has probably the weirdest career of anybody in the history of the promotion. Like in her first fight, she became the champion, didn't fight for like 3 years after that, had that failed weight cut and had the title basically stripped of her, moved up a weight class, looked good in her fight, and then took another 2 years off, came back, missed weight by 7 pounds, and is probably now going to get cut. Like, I can't think of a weirder UFC career than that, but she's going to go down in UFC history as being the first flyweight champion ever and being a former champion in general. And what's her record? Like 5-3 or something along those lines. It's just a very strange career. I hope that somehow she's able to turn it around. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Bellator maybe signs her for the 145 division. It seems like that's the direction she wants to go in. So maybe that's what ends up being next. And then she gets kind of a second wind in Bellator, but I don't think she's fighting in the UFC again.
You hear that, Scott Coker? You hear that? Cyborg versus Nicco Montano. Make it happen.
I can empathize because I gain 10 pounds every 2 years as well. But, I'm not a professional athlete. It sucks, dude, because every time I want to think of her as just kind of one of the most unfairly hated and maligned, like high-level fighters in UFC history, she makes it fair to hate.
I know, makes it hard. She makes it hard.
Like her story about the UFC basically asking her to do the Native American shuck and jive, like, rings very true. It just sounds like something they would absolutely do in the 2020s, like everything else be damned. But man, ultimately fighters, they always have an excuse when they miss weight. They always want to tell their side of the story, but on a certain level, the number on the scale is your side of the story. It tells us everything we need to know, especially if you fail repeatedly.
And she didn't even make like an excuse that wasn't like, yeah, things didn't go right and I missed weight. Like that was kind of her excuse, right? Mm-hmm. So
yes,
I mean, yeah.
Aaron, you were so right. I wrote up a news story for Sherdog about her statement, and I'm just looking at it, going, "What do I say? I can't say it was an apology or an explanation."
Yeah. And it wasn't a PSA. She called it a PSA. It wasn't a PSA.
Yeah, no.
And it wasn't an excuse.
Like,
it was just like, things didn't go well, and I missed weight. It's like, we know that. So
it is
okay.
And it was like 8 paragraphs long. It's like, we got that part. What are you okay? But
yeah.
Yeah. So before we move on to UFC 265 talk, one question that I want to throw out there to you fellas: who had the least remarkable time as UFC champion, Nicco Montoya or Jermaine Durandamy?
I mean, that's a great question, but
Ooh.
I would have, yeah, because Jermaine didn't like lose the title either. I mean, okay, I'm gonna say Montano, and the reason why is because Jermaine Durandamy moved up for a token title. She's not a 45er. She knows she's not a 45er. She knew she wasn't the 45er when they wanted her to fight Cyborg, and that's the reason probably she didn't want to fight Cyborg. Cyborg was going to have like 20 pounds on her. So I kind of don't blame her. And they also didn't really, I think she wanted more money also for it. And I'm always going to side with a fighter for that reason. So I think she actually had like legit reasons. And now that Montano has missed weight again at a higher weight class, I have a lot of trouble sympathizing with her for that reason. But so I'm going to go with that. That's going to be my answer.
Oh, dude, completely.
Yeah.
Because missing weight that's commonplace. That happens all the time. Unfortunately, it even happens at the championship level. But Durandamy, I mean, she made a splash. She didn't just say, I don't want to fight Cyborg. She was like, I don't want to fight Cyborg because I think she's full of horse steroids. She's a drug cheat. And then she went back to her full-time job as a cop and like dared the UFC to call her chicken. They obliged, just flat out said, oh, she's scared of Cyborg, screw this lady. Like she dropped a big rock in the pond, like on her way out there.
And look at that redemption story too. Like I think she is, if she hadn't fought Nunes already, like she's the number one fighter in that division outside of Nunes. Like I think that she's proven that. So, she's actually bounced back quite a bit and is in the division she should be in and looked okay against Nunes in that first round too.
And she's so terrified to fight Cyborg that she'll fight the woman that destroyed her. It just.
But it's a fair level playing field at 135 pounds. Yeah. So there is some sort of, moral high road there.
There is, but Montano just, man, even spinners like me that try and make there's a silver lining in there somewhere. I look, ooh, boy. I mean, at what point
there's a silver lining. She's helping Native Americans learn self-defense because Native American women are getting kidnapped and disappearing, and the cops are doing nothing about it. So there's some silver lining for you.
I mean, if she's able to use her platform for that, then I'm good with that. But as far as professional level, I mean, boy.
I think in the moment, Nicco Montoya looked better as she was losing her title because you have a lot of sympathy for her with the injury woes and whatnot that she had leading up to the failed weight cut for UFC 228. So it was very easy to get on her side. And then Jermaine Durandamy, the narrative that was presented to us was that she was scared and like
right.
And the thing is, we hear fighters say that all the time and we don't believe it, but that was the one time where it seemed really believable because obviously if you won a belt at 145 and Cyborg is in your promotion, the next logical step is that you're fighting Cyborg and there's no way around that. So to then win that belt and say, hey, I don't want to fight Cyborg because of principles, it just felt funny. It felt real funny to me. And that was the one time I believed, okay, a fighter might actually be afraid of this upcoming opponent. But now we see how things have played out. Montoya has continued to screw things up on the scale. Jermaine Durandamy worked her way back up to a title shot at 135 and is still one of the elites in the world. So, yeah, they just age differently. I think that's all there. All right, fellas. So Ben is located in the Houston, Texas area. He will also be taking advantage of that location at the Toyota Center for UFC 265. Expect to see him cage side with probably I Fox with Juice podcast mask on, sitting there on press row. So Ben, I'll direct this at you first since you will be there. Nunes versus Pena off the card, a COVID withdrawal. I think the second time that Amanda Nunes has contracted COVID-19, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think this, like tell me what you think the impact on the show is with that fight being taken off the card?
Well, I mean, Aaron has come in tonight and just like beaten us all over the head with like completely correctly beaten us all over the head with how the average fan does not see things on the basis of pure competitive merit the way we do. So I look at it as, oh man, we lost a title fight involving the best fighter in the world. Like, I think Amanda Nunes is the best pound for pound fighter in the world. And instead now we get the interim heavyweight title fight that they basically slapped together just so they wouldn't have Nunes headline this card. But the average fan is like, whatever, like I will miss it even if I heavily favored Nunes, because honestly, she's got the competitive mantle she picked up from Cyborg, where it's like, yeah, I know she's going to be a minus 1,000 favorite over everyone she fights from here on out, but it's legacy time. I still want to see her take those fights. In a sport as unpredictable as MMA, there is something to be said for getting out there time and time again and beating the people that you're supposed to beat, because there have been many, many times that has not happened. So I'm bummed to lose that fight. I'm bummed to lose the chance to, see Amanda Nunes ply her trade from 15 feet away on press row, but getting to see Derrick Lewis walk out to Fat Pat in Houston and take on Cyril Gane is not a bad consolation prize.
I've got to say, for a card in Houston, this one is not so trill. Not so trill.
Oh,
but the main event. But the main event, I mean, it's basically the aside from Derrick Lewis being in it, it's kind of a fugazi main event. I mean, let's be real about it. We've got an interim championship that's being put on, even though the champion is perfectly healthy.
It's being put on out of spite. That's the worst part about it. It's
like a negotiating chip, and everybody's like, yeah all right, cool, let's go. Yeah. But let's call it for what it is. I mean, listen, Lewis versus Gane is headlining a fight night two months ago. Let's be real. It basically is headlining a fight night. In fact, this entire card is essentially a fight night card. I'm excited for it. I listen, I love all the fights. I'm the wrong person to ask about whether a card's going to be good or not. Like Lewis versus Gane to me is an awesome fight. I'm excited for it. I just don't think that it's a true championship fight. And I think Nunes versus Pena could have been interesting too. And obviously we've lost that one. I think it'll probably be rescheduled in the next couple months or whatever it is. But at the same time, it's like, I'm excited about the card because I love the sport. But if I was the average fan, I don't think I'd be reaching for my wallets on this one.
This is a hard $7 sell. I mean, this isn't. I think we all remember. Well, most of us should remember where TJ DeSantis on his preview shows would ask guests, "How much would you pay for this fight to build the pay-per-view to see how much is this pay-per-view worth?" And this is a $20 pay-per-view, and that's including Chiesa, Luque, and Jose Aldo and Pedro Munoz, and unfortunately not Rafael Fiziev on the main card. But this. It hurt me as a fight fan, and it made me a little grateful as the Sherdog play-by-play guy, because I don't have one 25-minute fight to write up and not two. But really, do we think that would have been 25-minute fight? I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, you guys are right. This won't hurt the bottom line, which is so crazy because who headlined one of the biggest pay-per-views of all time? Maybe by accident she did, but UFC 200 was Nunes versus Tate, and I don't know if that ever really carried over. That shine didn't seem to attach to her. And that's crazy because Amanda Nunes is great. She's great on the microphone. She's a terrifying force of a fighter. She destroyed the feared woman that was out there, and she destroyed the other one in Cyborg afterwards. She has all the makings of being the rock star that the UFC is refusing to make her. Or I mean, at this point, I have to feel it's refusal. It can't be incapable because she could sell herself, because not only is her fists are terrifying, but she can smile and laugh and have a good time, and she has a happy family, and there's all the stories put together. But this won't. If Duffy, if you get there and you polled the audience, some of them might not even know the fight was on the card, and many others would be like, good. I'm glad that women's fight's off the card because women shouldn't be fighting. There should be in the whatever people say.
Yeah.
I'm happy her family's all right because even the little baby had COVID. That was kind of a scary concern for us. But I guess that I think it was Ramondi. I think said that they or maybe it was Mike Bond who said that Mike Bond, that they're all they're all clear now.
All negative now. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, that's great news there. So, all right, fellas. Well, let's get into some predictions for the question that we love to ask leading up to these big cards. Who you got? Michael Chiesa and Vicente Luque, a very, very important clash at welterweight. Aaron, I'm going to begin with you. Who you got?
This is a really tough one because I think it's a really close fight, but I think that Luque has more ways to win this fight. And I think that his physicality is going to give Chiesa problems. I don't think that Chiesa's resume has aged all that well. And I think that generally I would have to lean Luque in this one. And I really like Michael Chiesa. I think he's an incredibly talented fighter. And I think he certainly could find a way to win this fight. I just think that Luque has more ways to win it. And I tend to always side with that kind of fighter in these circumstances. I just don't know where Chiesa is going to beat Luque. He's not going to be on the feet. And then on the ground, Luque, I think, is very underrated. So that's going to be the side I'd go with.
All right. Ben, who you got?
I'm with Aaron on this one. I think Chiesa is fantastic. I'm glad he finally moved up to 170. Just relentlessly entertaining. He's a complete savage in the cage and a very kind of intelligent and interesting guy outside of it. But his liabilities are the same as they've always been. In that, one, he's always hittable on the feet and he's vulnerable to the body. And while he's a sensational offensive grappler, he's always been vulnerable to getting in bad positions, getting submitted himself on the ground. Those are both things that do not line up well against Vicente Luque's strengths. So yeah, I have Luque here. And even though I think it's a pretty even matchup, I just the way they line up with each other, I expect Luque is going to get a finish in the first half of the fight. Just,
right.
This is getting finished.
Jay, tell me who you got.
I was back and forth on this fight. Like this right now, this is a pick 'em, and that's right. I feel like that's right because on the one hand, Luque's volume and the damage he does with his strikes are the kind that are really going to make Chiesa question his life decisions. I would argue pure striking power and intensity. I gotta put him up there in terms of the best guys and toughest guys that Chiesa has faced. You got like the Pettis, like what was it, like 8 years ago, Jorge Masvidal, when he didn't quite have all the. I mean, he's been the same Jorge Masvidal forever, but it didn't have all the power behind it. I gotta think that the striking is going to be so heavily favored in Luque, as long as he doesn't get pinned against the wall, as long as he doesn't get forced to have to fight off takedowns. Because the one thing I've seen where you can get to Luque is if you hit him as much and as hard as he hits you, or if you can hit him and get out of the way, like Wonder Boy was able to do that. And Chiesa's not that guy. That's not his game. And you got to watch out for the counter submission game of Luque. Like, say he gets it down, Luque can somehow scramble around and hit a Darce choke. You're like, where did that come from? So, and we know that's happened before. I think that didn't Masvidal hit a Darce on him? I think he did. I got Luque. I got him by finish. We're gonna know within the first 2 minutes. We're gonna look at it and go, okay, all right, it's just a matter of time for fighter A or fighter B, like, because if Chiesa gets him down and grinds him out a little bit and forces Luque to be like, oh boy, wait a second, hang on here, we could have a ball game. But I think I'm gonna go Luque is gonna put him out.
Yeah, it's very difficult for me to disagree with anything that you gentlemen said. I mean, as much as I like Michael Chiesa at welterweight, I mean, he was killing himself to make 155, and he's looked physically just so much better, so much stronger, sharper, faster at welterweight. I don't think it's going to be enough against Luque. Luque has consistently shown himself to be incredibly durable, a guy who just doesn't run out of steam, someone who has zero risk aversion. Like this is a guy who will not care at all if you're going to try to take him down and hold him down, because let's be honest, that's really the only hope that Chiesa has on paper for this. And if you can take the best shots that Tyron Woodley has thrown in several years, if you can stand toe to toe with Leon Edwards, like some of the best guys at welterweight, and be unfazed and perform very well in a lot of these circumstances, Michael Chiesa's very rudimentary wrestling attack is not going to be the thing that throws you off your game. And keep in mind too, like you guys said before, Luque is no slouch on the ground either. So if it gets there, if Chiesa's holding him down, who's to say that Luque, with who I think is stronger, couldn't just initiate a scramble and use his power to get back up? But I think Chiesa is going to endure so much hell trying to get that fight to the ground that it won't even matter. If he gets it there, it'll be a compromised version of him once the fight hits the floor, and I think Luque gets the finish. So it's going to be a rough night for Chiesa. All right, fellas. So our next matchup at bantamweight, Jose Aldo, the former featherweight champion, against Pedro Munoz. This is, oh my God, I love this fight. Aaron, once again, tell me who you got.
Well, I thought the last fight was close. This one I think is even closer. This is a tougher one to call. This is actually only the second time that Jose Aldo has fought an older opponent in 5 years. And Munoz is only 2 days older than him, but older nonetheless. And I mean, this is going to be a striking bout between two fantastic strikers. And I think I would have to side with Aldo. But like, honestly, this is a total coin flip fight for me. And I don't have any real strong opinion on it.
Ben, who you got?
I'm with Aaron here. The line is really close on this one, but I'm leaning Aldo. Aldo's new career act at 135 is one of the most unlikely seeming things I've ever seen happen before my own eyes in MMA. If you told me the guy who was the greatest 145 pounder in history, and really the only thing he couldn't win at 145 was a Jose Aldo lookalike contest on the scale because he looked like a fucking skeleton, that he in his early 30s was going to drop to 135 and be able to hang with the best fighters in the sport at that weight, I would never have believed it. But yeah, this is a striking battle, and I've yet to see Jose Aldo, aside from getting blitzed by Conor McGregor, I've yet to see him get much the worse of a striking battle.
Volkanovski destroyed him, I think, on the feet. That wasn't a close fight.
And especially as he started to kind of roll downhill late. But I don't think Pedro Munoz is that guy. I think Jose Aldo is going to go straight to his bread and butter. It was nice to see him bring back, the OG leg kicks against Marlon Vera. And if it goes to the ground, these are both guys whose ground games are underrated because they're underutilized. You just don't see it very often. But it should be a great fight there as well. But yeah, give me Jose Aldo by decision.
Jay, who you got?
Well, I'm proud that Aaron stole my thunder a little bit, because I was going to ask you guys, do you believe that, up they're 2 days separate? Because you look at their careers and be like, there's no way these guys are the same age.
Munoz feels 5 years younger.
He feels so much younger.
Aldo's younger than Francis. That always blows my mind.
It's so
Francis
crazy that Aldo's so young. Well, we don't really know how old Ngannou is these days. Like Chet Congo, he could be like 58 and we have no idea. There's a whole funny story about that I'll save for another time. I'm going to disagree with you guys here, and for a few reasons. You don't put Pedro Munoz out. You can't. I've seen guys try. I think the only guy who did was way a long time ago when he got hit with didn't he get hit with a guillotine and then the fight was overturned because the guy who tapped him was test positive or was smoking or something. Anyway, you don't put Munoz out. He's fought the heavy hitters or grapplers or whatever you want to throw at him type of fighters. And what Munoz has been doing his last several fights is the kind of thing that will make Jose Aldo struggle. He will put numbers on you. He will put hands on you. He will be in your face. He won't let you breathe. He is the kind of guy that will get into a firefight. He'll take two to land one, and he's okay with that. Like in the Aljo Sterling fight. I think Aljo Sterling nearly doubled him up in strikes, and he was happy as a clam. He was just ready to keep on rolling. The only times that he hasn't put up crazy strike totals are the fights that he knocks the guy out. So he's not like a Max Holloway type per se, but he can approach those numbers very quickly, and numbers don't tell the whole story. But simply putting the pressure, because we know both these guys excel when they are fighting going straight ahead. Neither of these guys likes to fight off their back foot. And I think the not only the accuracy, but I think just the sheer hands and face, and then having to switch around and kick to the body and mix things up like that. I think that's going to keep Aldo at bay a little bit more. I think it's going to be fiercely competitive. This is my fight of the night. I can't see it not going that way just because of what they bring to the table. I could see both of them beating the brakes off each other, and I can't wait. But yeah, I'm going to go with Munoz by a fairly close to like a 29-28 decision. But I see Munoz just having the edge by just sheer pushing the pace a little more than Aldo does these days. But I would be fine to be wrong the other way, because that'll be a fun fight too.
So Jay, I'm definitely going to agree with you as far as this being a fight of the night contender. Like this matchup is just spectacular on paper, but I'm going to disagree with you on the outcome. I'm going to side with Jose Aldo here, and to cite some of your reasons for siding with Munoz. I mean, high volume, stays in your face. Two things that will stop you from having a high volume, high pressure attack are body shots and leg kicks. Kill the mobility, kill the gas tank. Aldo excels in both of those areas. And to see those leg kicks return against Marlon Vera, I would be very surprised if they just went back to hide in whatever closet he kept them in for the past 7 years for this one. And he's also one of the best body punchers the sport has ever seen. This is a guy who consistently can dig into your liver and make you regret ever looking at a bottle of alcohol in your life. This is the guy who I think will stop that pressure attack for Munoz. Couple liver shots, couple leg kicks, and we've got a different fight. I don't think it's going to be enough to put Munoz out because he is notoriously tough, but it will be enough to make a clear-cut decision. Jose Aldo gets his hand raised in the end.
I'm going to make one controversial counter pick. Munoz is going to out leg kick him. I don't have the confidence. I don't have the confidence.
Jose doesn't throw the leg kicks much anymore.
Right. I don't have that confidence that he's going to be able to. He'll throw them and they're going to suck. But I see Munoz, because like I think he threw like 50 at Jimmy Rivera the other whenever they fought last. Yeah, I see that. Anyway, let's move along.
All right. Well, now the main event, the interim heavyweight title. Derrick Lewis, former undisputed title challenger, had his crack at Daniel Cormier at UFC 230. He is going to be facing 9-fight veteran, soon to be double-digit fight veteran Cyril Gane. Aaron, who you got?
From a betting standpoint, I would take Derrick Lewis by KO. It's plus 420. I think that's his way to win. And, people say the guy has a puncher's chance, and that's kind of it. But at the same time, if you look at it stylistically, Derrick Lewis is not going to let Cyril Gane poke at him for 5 rounds. Yep. He's just not. He's going to eat those punches and then try to throw big shots. And Cyril Gane has a lot of experience in terms of kickboxing and stand-up. And whether or not he can eat a Derrick Lewis punch and continue to live another day during the fight, I would have to take Derrick Lewis in this one, honestly. I think that Derrick Lewis is going to be able to do things that Cyril Gane is not accustomed to. And if you look at all the guys that Cyril Gane has fought so far in the UFC, if you run them down, so last fight, Alexander Volkov, perfect fight for Cyril Gane. You got a guy who's going to stand with him, who's not really going to attempt takedowns, who's going to try to, outpoint him. Jairzinho Rozenstruik, same kind of thing. Rozenstruik has power, but if you put Rozenstruik into kickboxing mode, he will accept kickboxing mode. That's what his bread and butter is. Junior Dos Santos, I think, was a good example of the fact that Cyril Gane has gotten hit in fights. And when you bring the fight to him, he can put you out. Like, I think that was an important win for Cyril Gane in that sense. But if you look at JDS's chin at this stage in his career and compare it to Derrick Lewis, you're comparing apples to oranges. Tanner Boser, another perfect fight for Cyril Gane. Stand-up fight, tactical fight, pick him apart. And I think that if you look at those being the last kind of fights that he's had, you've got a guy like Derrick Lewis who's very unorthodox. In fact, Cyril Gane came out today and said that he's bringing in guys that he wants to throw unorthodox stuff at him, to just throw big looping punches, not be technical at all. Derrick Lewis, I think, is going to be willing to eat punches, to move forward, move into those punches, and try to land something big. And I think at some point in time over the course of 5 rounds, he has a better chance of hitting the home run than Cyril Gane does. I think Cyril Gane, if you look at the odds of him winning and you look at the props, the odds of him winning by decision are like plus 160. I do not think that Derrick Lewis will allow a fight to go 5 rounds to a decision. I think that he's either going to get stopped by Gane at some point in time because he gets reckless purposely, because that's what his path is, or he's going to get reckless and he's going to connect on the chin of Gane and he's going to get hit with something that he's never been hit with before, which is the power of Derrick Lewis. And we've seen him utilize that power time and time again to put out some of the best heavyweights of all time. I have to lean Lewis in this one. It's weird. I know that he's a massive underdog, but I think that just stylistically, this could be trouble for Ciryl Gane.
Ben, who you got?
Hey, I know that we've run fairly long, but I will not shut up about this. This line is fucking insane. How is Derrick Lewis like a plus 280 underdog here? Like everything, and I'm not saying this to you, Ant, Aaron, and Jay, but to you watching, everything you think you know about Derrick Lewis's game is a lie. Like, you know, he comes across as hey, he's just a big slugger. No, he's a guy who throws flying knees and throws some of the most untelegraphed head kicks in the heavyweight division. He looks like this kind of barrel-chested dude who like looks kind of lazy and not in the best shape. No, while he is now the UFC's heavyweight all-time leader in knockouts, he has been the UFC's all-time leader in knockouts in the third round or later for years now. He has eclipsed Yoel Romero as the gold standard of the fighter who continues to throw effective offense late into a fight, even though he looks tired. Like, just look no further than his fight with Volkov. He looks like a guy who just wants to brawl and is helpless when you get him on the ground. That's not true. Every time he gets taken down, he proves that MMA does not work on Derrick Lewis. He waits a few minutes, then he bench presses you off and he stands back up. I mean, maybe not if you're Daniel Cormier, but you have to go back a long ways for the last time Derrick Lewis was losing bad fights to not great fighters in a way that showed holes in his game. Like Derrick Lewis, for a guy who I frankly don't know how much he trains, continues to make incremental improvements between fights. I cannot believe, especially right after like the Blades fight, that Derrick Lewis is a 3-1 underdog to Ciryl Gane. He is absolutely going to present Gane with problems that Gane has not faced yet. And I'm not saying that Ciryl Gane can't deal with them. He is a shockingly intelligent and poised fighter in the cage for a guy with as little MMA experience as he has. Obviously, he's an incredibly physically gifted individual, but he's not seen what Derrick Lewis is going to throw at him. And I think Aaron's definitely right in that Lewis is going to be willing to taste Gane's power to land his own, because you know what? That's worked out pretty well for him so far. And you ride the horse, you know, that you got here with. But like, why would Gane be a 3-1 favorite to be able to deal successfully with what he's going to be seeing for the first time? And there's nobody in that gym that, you know, that can prepare him for this.
And he just did 5 rounds with Volkov, like how many weeks ago? Like 4 or 5 weeks ago? I mean, it seems like it was very recent. And I'm glad you guys aren't making fun of me. I thought you guys were for taking Lewis, but
no.
Continue, Ben.
No, I mean, obviously I'm a homer. He's a hero here, but it wouldn't matter if he was from Timbuktu. Like I've got Lewis in this one. And at the very least, I thought this should have been close to a pick 'em.
Yeah, definitely good analysis there, Ben. Jay, Adonis is ready to make his
Disagrees, buddy.
Oh man, he is running.
Adonis is like, but Gane is really
Gane?
cute.
He's
Yeah,
fundamentally sound.
Gane's so technical. Jay, who you got?
Well, I won't bury the lead, and I'm actually surprised by how things have gone. The prime pick for Sherdog this week will be Derrick Lewis wins by TKO/KO, which right now at this exact taping of the show is plus 455, because that's the only way he's going to win this fight. You think Derrick Lewis is going to submit Ciryl Gane? You think he's going to win a 5-round decision against Ciryl Gane? That won't happen. Even if he makes it to the distance, he'll lose 3, maybe 4 rounds. So it would not. It's the pick that makes the most sense, and it is also an equally shocking to me that Derrick Lewis is quickly approaching a status where Ciryl Gane is about to be a 4-1 favorite. Like, he's 370 right now. Minus 370 is Ciryl Gane, and like I think FanDuel has him at minus 400. That's crazy. That is so wild to me. And here's why it's wild: not just because of what we've seen throughout his entire career, or that, you know, even the guy who I believe would have the best chance to, you line up the fights and go, okay, how does Derrick fight against this guy? Volkov. And you go, okay, Volkov controlled him for 4 minutes and 55 seconds of, until that, and then boom, dead. But where's this fight taking place, gentlemen? It's taking place at home with a full crowd.
The land of Brad Jordan.
And Derrick Lewis is the kind of guy who the crowd will amp him up. where the fourth round comes and he's getting jabbed up and he can't quite cut the distance. Even though Ciryl Gane only has like 2 inches of reach on him, he fights so long it'll be like 8. Even if he can't quite figure out a way to approach him and Gane circles very effectively, Derrick Lewis is going to do that thing that he does, and it's going to blow people's minds, but it's also going to make Houston the happiest town in the world for about 15 minutes. So give me Derrick Lewis by knockout. I don't think it'll be quick. I don't think it'll be like a first round smashing. I think he's going to have to figure out how to approach him and get past the ridiculously long limbs of Ciryl Gane. Gane's best chance to victory is to take Lewis down. And I don't think that's going to happen for long enough. I think that may happen once, twice, not 3 times a lady, and Lewis is going to knock him out. And I'm taking that pick to the bank. And I am proud of you guys too for feeling the same way.
Well, it's unanimous.
Whoa!
Derrick Lewis. Yeah, I think
he was going to take Gane. He just didn't want to feel left out.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like Gane, the smart money should be on Ciryl Gane. He is a far more experienced and better technical striker. He's got the reach. He's got the athleticism. He's got all the things on paper that say you should be able to beat Derrick Lewis. And we've seen him execute the perfect game plan time after time in a very, very brief time as an MMA fighter. But it doesn't matter when you're fighting Derrick Lewis. We've seen the perfect game plan get executed on Derrick Lewis. I was there at 229 to see Volkov just beat the brakes out of him. And then in the last 15 seconds, it didn't matter anymore. We watched Curtis Blades just put all sorts of work on him. And then it didn't matter. We've seen Gabriel Gonzaga take mount on Derrick Lewis, and it didn't matter. There are so many things that this man does. What was Alexio
Cain
Oleinik?
Velasquez. Oh, no, I'm thinking of the Ngannou fight.
Ngannou, yeah. Alexio Oleinik, styled on him on the ground for the first round and then got knocked out. It doesn't matter if you're perfect against Derrick Lewis if it's not for the full duration of the bout. The moment you make a mistake, the moment you slip on your concentration, or the moment he just happens to find your chin, it's over. And I don't think that Ciryl for 25 minutes. And especially the level of perfection you need to beat Derrick Lewis in the striking battle. And like you said, Jay, maybe his best chance is to take this to the ground. Lewis is definitely not going to omoplata his way to a belt, but you're not exactly going to take him on the ground and just do whatever you want to him if your name is
Gane won't attempt a takedown in this fight. Gane's not going to attempt a takedown in this fight, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if you do attempt it, you might end up like Curtis Blades. You just might. So, I think this is such a dangerous fight for Gane. I don't think he makes it through this one conscious. Derrick Lewis stuns the Houston crowd and makes them extraordinarily happy. And Ben Duffy is going to get kicked off a press row for cheering.
Well, I'm taking Mike Jackson with me because we're gonna high five for sure. He'll probably see my high five and throw a fist bump and be don't be such a dork, Duffy, But
it could be a great year for H-Town. You have Charles Oliveira, who used to live there and train there, and now you've got Lauren Murphy in a month. Stranger things have happened, but she's taking on Shevchenko, so who knows? It could be a trail year after all.
You heard it here first. Lauren Murphy is going to win the title.
And Gooden had that cornerman Saturday that looked just like Scarface. I don't know if you guys caught that on the broadcast. Yeah. He looked exactly like Scarface. So go to my Twitter. I got a screen cap of that. But
anyway, transitional Scarface, because there was Scarface when he got up to 300 pounds and started looking like Jazzy Faye, and now he's gotten all skinny again. And
All right, fellas. So that's essentially it for our picks on 265. Very quickly, one fight that you're looking forward to outside of 3 fights that we picked for the card. Just one fight, and we'll move on to the next. Aaron, what's your one fight that you want to briefly highlight?
I love the Ode Osborne Manel Cap fight. I think that's going to be an awesome fight. Ode Osborne looked really good in his flyweight debut, and he throws that left with bad intentions, and I think he can catch Manel Cap with that. But if he doesn't, I think Manel Kape could work him for 3 rounds. I'm very curious to see how this one goes. So that's the fight that I'm going to be watching at 265.
All right, Ben, what's one fight you want to highlight?
Give me Rafael Fiziev versus Bobby Green, because Bobby Green, when he shows up to fight, if he shows up to fight in his best form, he is a guy that can a good next test for Fiziev, because he's an excellent wrestler on top of being an extremely competent striker. So as long as his head's in the game the whole time, that's kind of a sneaky trap fight for Fiziev, who is a super prospect.
All right, good one, Jay.
I'm going
pick?
old school. I'm going a lot older, in a gentleman who's on his first win streak in a decade. Ed Herman, baby. Ed Herman's making a path to the top. Okay, no, I can't say that. Ed Herman, Alonzo Manafield. That's a first round finish. So I'm excited for whoever gets knocked out, and or maybe awkwardly submitted, because Ed Herman has a very surprisingly deceptive submission game where suddenly Alonzo Manafield hits him, drops him, climbs on top, gets hit with a Kimura sweep, and you can see the nonsense is going to happen. So that is my nonsense fight of the night, and I am all here for it.
Oh, definitely a good
nonsense there. Though.
Yeah, very good nonsense. Very good nonsense. I'm gonna go a little bit different for my pick right here, because as much as I want to show some love to Miles John versus Anderson Dos Santos, partly because Anderson Dos Santos sounds like a Reebok jersey era, I'm going to point out 2 former title challengers who have a lot to prove, and that's Karolina Kowalkiewicz and Jessica Penne, 2 fighters who have shown themselves to be able to withstand massive amounts of damage and keep on going. And with the motivation of having some particular downslides in their careers, although I think Kowalkiewicz won her last one, or Penne won her last one. Sorry,
Penne won her last one. Yeah.
Yeah. There are 2 people, who need a win. They need to prove that they belong in the UFC still. That level of motivation with the level of durability that they have continued to show sounds like a bloody good time. So the violence meter will be high. Let's hope we don't get some sort of girl stoppage from the refs on this one. So, and let them fight it out. All right, fellas. I think that's going to do it for this edition of Unleashed. We've talked about everything as thoroughly as possible with one of the best in the MMA media. Thank you, Aaron, for showing up. You can find him on TSN. Oh, wow. I think Ben is officially in love with you now.
Oh, yeah.
Shout out to H-Town. Shout out to H-Town for this week.
Port Arthur technically, but we will definitely claim him. Houston just kind of spreads. So, yeah.
I wish I had Fun B was born.
Fun B was born.
I could just hold up.
Yes.
I'm a big Devin the Dude guy. Just Trying to Live is one of the underrated classics in rap music. So
file that under hip hop. I cannot play in the car with my mom.
Yeah. Definitely not.
Just remember that being Trill is an automatopoeia, kids. And then
I saw him a couple weeks ago at a Fury event. I tried to stop him and tell him it's actually a portmanteau, but he wasn't hearing it.
Oh my God, my son has my glasses. Oh my God, put him down. Oh shit, he's about to break them. Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend to tell a friend, tell a friend to tell 10 more friends. Find me on MMA Appointment the Body Lock. Aaron is on TSN. These guys are on SureDog. Stay beautiful, stay positive, stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Peace.